Hello again. I was always astonished at how left-wingers and liberal types fawned over Barack Obama and acted as though he was the Messiah. I think they must have been hypnotised by the colour of his skin and the sheer novelty of seeing a black man in the White House, because he struck me as the worst president for a long time. True, he was good-natured, intelligent and compassionate, but this is not necessarily what you need or want in a president, because he was also timid and weak. On today's international scene, that is a disaster, as we saw in the nuclear deal which he struck with Iran. When Trump was voted in, many intellectuals and academics were dismayed because he was, just an ordinary white man with the instincts of many other ordinary white people. This was anathema for the intelligentsia. They were quick to point out that Trump, unlike Obama, was not a cultured intellectual, but rather a little on the vulgar side and ignorant about things like literature and art. It was said too that he was unpredictable and grew angry at times, which nobody could ever have said of Obama. There's all the difference in the world between being a good man and being a good president. There can be no doubt that Obama was a good man, but he was a lousy president. He reminded me of Jimmy Carter, another very good man, but also a hopeless president. Trump, on the other hand, reminded me more of Richard Nixon. Nixon, I think even his best friends would agree, was not a good man, and, like Trump, was unpredictable and given to fits of rage, in addition to swearing like a trooper. He was a pretty good president, though. In fact, being unpredictable is exactly what you need in a president of the United States. When the Russians, or Chinese, Iranians, Koreans, whatever, are trying to figure out how America will react to some new provocation, they first like to look at the president and work out if he will be calm and collected and follow sensible advisers. If so, then they will shamelessly take advantage of this. One remembers the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan at the end of 1979. The Russians had gauged quite correctly that Carter was a decent, humane and sensible man who would not take any hasty or ill-considered actions, and that his advisers would all be telling him to act with restraint and good sense. This meant that the Soviets could get away with invading a strategically important country. All Carter did in the end was stop Americans from taking part in the Olympic Games in Moscow. He wasn't going to start a war because he'd lost his temper. Now think about how Nixon handled a similar situation in 1973. During the Yom Kippur War between Israel and a coalition of Syria and Egypt, the Israelis had both countries on the run, surrounding the Egyptian Third Army in Sinai and being well on the road to Damascus. The Russians were ticked off at seeing their proxies defeated in this way, and they put airborne units on alert and sent a ship to Egypt which contained nuclear weapons. They also mentioned in passing to the Americans that if the Americans wouldn't do anything, then they, the Soviets, would take unilateral action and send their own troops to the Middle East. Nixon's response was quite unexpected and unpredictable. He grew angry and did something which nobody thought he would possibly be likely to do. On October the 24th, 1973, he ordered US forces to DEFCON 3, and the Russians were horrified to see that America was ready to go to war with them on this matter. The point is that they had practiced scenarios of this kind, all predicated on the assumption that an American president would behave in a calm, measured and reasonable way. It's a big mistake with a guy like Nixon in charge. It was quite wholesome, though, in the long run, because it did tell the Russians for a few years that as long as Nixon was around, they wouldn't be able to do anything too outrageous. Trump is cut from the same piece of cloth, and that really was no bad thing. It meant that the rest of the world never quite knew what he would do next, and this kept the Russians and Iranians on their toes. Nobody really wanted American missiles to start launching, and you never knew with Trump. It's that element of uncertainty which is so good. It is possible, indeed likely, that Donald Trump played up to his man of the people image and that he wasn't as crude and ill-educated as he sometimes made himself out to be. When it comes to the present man in the White House, though, there is no doubt at all about his condition. He is almost incapable of giving a coherent speech, and lately his staff have not even been allowing him to answer questions from the press spontaneously. It really has got that bad. Does anybody think that the Russians and Chinese have not noticed that there is a lame duck in charge of America and that they will not take full advantage of this? The awful thing is that everybody connected with the American government has a vested interest in keeping Biden nominally in power, because the one thing worse than a weak president with the early signs of dementia would be Kamala Harris taking charge. I don't think there's a single person in the world who would want such a thing.